Hello. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, is recorded confessing and demonstrating to me non-verbally. In 2006, he was in a district court case in Connecticut, and names on all sides of criminal and civil cases are increasingly tied to people who made nonverbal confirmations and demonstrations to me of other people's communications. And they had roles in World Trade Center attack predicate acts with people named Scalora too, and with Weathersfield Police and their Facebook pages in the British Superior Court, Harper Courts, and the campuses. They use the Facebook has collusions personally and professionally too, on their all on, completely on their own. And the difference of that, or completely on their own too, the FBI, other agencies and courts and their family members have the same house/s, and a whole bunch of people tied to them that have been putting fake things in databases at and between all the campuses. There was a Joshua Stryker involved with a Ray Clow that students and professors and professionals at and leaders of the campuses I went to, intercities, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with them. There's a father and son named with that same name. And they have another, in other words, involved with foreign and domestic military and people on off the state corrections offices, state judicial branch offices, involved with drugs and medicines crimes, also in the form of them putting people to fake uses of drugs and alcohol and putting fake transcripts and fake conversations with people into databases as the only people allowed to counter such. On a mass scale, they are using and have used all natures of investigators. The way the breaching method shows them they have to hide how they already use that. And to hide it to come it shows the methods of doing that too. Offensively, mass identity theft, fraud, slanders. There's a Perone family I don't know that sought me out to make fake exceptions, make it look like other, at the corner of also with the Kerr family and a Demoro family and a Kalal family and people from Pakistan and people from India. But I think it's a Pakistan trying to pull in India's name. And that's not the time to, in other words, A through Z are being and have been used as systems tactical terror from the human species body of individual bodies with all group differences, therefore names, being generated. But rather than appreciate that with our long words, let alone the protraction, the relativity of that to it. So, in other words, we are systems tactical terror from that. And there are self-valued roles with that, or that body is sensed, including if that body is a majority of people, including if it's everyone, as the phenomenon of a country that can only be operated by locations, areas, and states, syntax, before names, difference. In other words, difference appreciation is positive or negative, but we have not discerned the difference between criminals and cities since nature is a positive. And per nature itself shows us, there's a difference between criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatments, and positive that's also positive onto itself. That nature positive onto itself, that nature has where it reveals evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. There means to make positives that are collusions, therefore negatives, criminal insidiousness, collusions, and screening what kept and keeps this. A human fact true nature breaching method is a scientific value inside the communications of James Madison and the founders, plural, behind him and his plan that referred to themselves and asked us to refer to themselves, plural, as him, singular. And then they went together and got George Washington to help them to use that plan, to agree to help them and to use that plan. And that plan was to counter-extort, to force the rest of the founders, both colonists and Native Americans, to fight syntactically with each other, even though they could only do it to an extent, which is how they had to leave slavery, entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, therefore against themselves too. Fact true nature tortured, extorted, and enslaved, and without free speech. And we have their words interpreted without that interpreted. They declassified how they didn't have speech. They declassified how everyone's speech was measured and maintained. Collusions against themselves and against everyone else to an extent. and pretending out and blaming other things, others yourselves for that. Otherwise, that body was sensed, including if that body was the majority of people, including if it was everyone. Any grouping of countries while still entertaining the locations, areas, and the logic and nature of locations, areas, and states can't depend that in themselves at the same time. Can't afford but to have nature debate with people, increasingly reliant upon principles treatments that are criminal and citizens' natures of principle treatments. And they use that to get away. That's relative to how we have black people's rights of eyes, which is inseparable from the breaching methods, reassignment of what nature communicates with that. And while also inseparable from that is how James Madison communicated, and our founders communicated other about how the breaching method reassigned what black and white communicate, what black people's rights of eyes communicate. But we have other things, others ourselves. Blame for things the breaching method caused, even slavery, overtly / insidiously simultaneously in our faces. They're framing our founders for slavery. And they're using all truths for lies. There was a breaching method that forced roles with sick things entrenched, and then America's founders were born. Already roles had been also causing negative value nature progressions, acts in nature as demonstrated by nature. And those too were blamed on other things, others themselves, for a breaching method that put up these fake identities of integrity. Forgiveness is because there's a certain type of victim / hyper victim, A through Z. Forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to blame other things, others ourselves, for things that nature itself and not our founders told us to blame on the breaching method that was sick, that had been sickly, distinctly sustained against Native Americans. See Chief. And had been distinctly sustained upon colonists, as it had already been sickly, distinctly sustained upon, the indigenous population before it was Native Americans. And Native Americans and regular citizens are still being counter-extorted, but only until we get liberated. That which has the Constitution from its abridgments. How they pretend other and get away with, is relative to how interbranch has been forging and switching names with child abusers through time. At each campus I went to, they have connections between themselves. Valley Crest in Wethersfield has a number of names involved with the neighbors of a DeMoro family there, and with a DeMoro family involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, also with names of businesses and houses next to Harvard Hospital through time. These are also names next to the New Britain's hospitals, a Gill family, and others on Covington Street, and an apartment. A family that owns the apartment has roles with a son who lived there, and some people who worked for the apartments, involved intercities with the intelligence community, people involved with retired Wethersfield police chiefs and fire departments, and real estate companies involved before and after the World Trade Center attack, with judges and prosecutors, has something to do with their roles with Wethersfield, with conjunctions to the state judicial branch offices like Route 3 and Elm Streets in Wethersfield and in Rocky Hill. Have roles with names on Covington Street where they train intelligence. Also with people with Whiting Forensics in Middletown. They're training still state police through Central Connecticut State University, where they still have roles with differences, racketeering, worse than war crimes, uses of their own differences of other people's differences. These are also some Black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, I caught at the same time Saudi themed. And they stole Saudi Arabia's identity with the Mendez police, with the Wethersfield Police Department, and Fox News, and the intelligence next to them. Some people with the name Domain. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with people involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids through time, including women involved with it. And they use their own differences, including the religious differences and other people's, to put in as their roles, putting fake conversations about that too. Where how people get away with pretending passions and emotions. Anyone had been halfway legitimate with their passions and emotions regarding law, it would have brought up how we have black people's whites of eyes, or would have allowed it to be brought up, and how that was replaced by the breaching method, and then America's founders were born. That would have brought up James Madison's plan. If anyone even allowed people to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, it would have brought up James Madison's plan. James Madison's plan caused the Declaration of Independence. James Madison's plan caused the Constitutional Convention. James Madison's plan caused the Civil War. But also the breaching method entrenched with slavery, torture, extortion. No one wanted, but everyone had roles. Therefore, it's self-value. Those exceptions too. Oh, but why would you? No, there's no choice. You have a nature debate regarding this broken grammar school. The best schools to the worst ones. The difference of that is also used by the breaching method, but through ourselves, where everyone's speaking. You guys changing and faking digital evidences with the FBI on Facebook. The difference of their guilt too. They've been using words like extremism, radical, and torture, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, since before the World Trade Center attack. They were shown they've been involved with torture methods since founding, pounding drums. Like they switch names into branch. They make confessions and refuse writing and put fake transcripts to put and records of what happened in life with fire departments, with courts, with police departments. Get them on paper, please. Mr. Scalise, there are proofs that the shooting might have been tied, even if it's all made up, because the news does make things up where they don't have the right to. And then they pretend that because they're licensed journalists, it means that they have legitimacy with truth. Oh, but we're relying for the intelligence. The intelligence is criminally foreign influence with themselves. They know that. They have wire crime acts and methods with their phones and with the Wethersfield police and other police departments with them, with the same ones involved with their sources at the same time, collusions with them. That's why they can't get on paper now. They already put all fake papers in databases. In other words. And they can't keep pretending. They already pretended fake things from backgrounds and hiding things from presidents themselves. These are people with a Scalora family involved with people at the World Trade Center and next to it. Also at their homes, victims of it, at their homes and next to it, like the state judicial branch offices and other natures of conjunctions to it. Also, Wethersfield Pizza House has rules with them with child theft frauds. People on all sides of Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University involved with some O'Brien family and with the neighbors of, and as people with the name King involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. People I never had classes with, never saw on inside of campuses, never saw Tim O'Brien, Andrew O'Brien on campus. They try to make a fake exception, pretend I don't realize, I don't remember things. I remember the roles next to the state judicial branch offices, try to make a fake exception. In other words, I never had a word of conversation with Dan King, and I'm still not getting a response for the confessions tied to the King family, and to there's a King Foundation involved with the Wethersfield Community Center, has something to do with the World Trade Center attack, with the names on all sides of it through time, increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. It's recorded that a Joe DeMauro and a Ray Collo faked, lied about themselves and me and the nature and tied and their motivations of it to families on all sides of that. And then they had those with the courts involved with them and the judicial branch office and corrections offices and a whole bunch of other countries and overt criminal enterprises. These are people involved with Russians and Ukraine, people from Pakistan etc. On and off, and this Leahy family put me in fake conversations with themselves. Increasingly, a Leahy family affected confessions to me from strangers about their roles with corners of buildings, with their roles planting evidences with people with a Brian Silver, New Britain Superior, a whole bunch of people with New Britain Superior Court, including victims advocates, have roles with sexual and medical offenders of kids, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the interbranch putting the same sequence as fake ties, fake natures of ties between people, and fake sequences, and fake behavior racketeering. Increasingly, people tied to New Britain Superior Court have been lying about their motivations for the uses of their own names and other people's names. And in other words, please get them and their kids. In other words, and that's because they're a victim / hyper victim, need to fake motivations because they've been used remotely. That's their motivation. Remotely criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers too have been faking all kinds of evidences rackets with all sides of criminal and civil cases. The lawyers, their family members, their sources. Same with the courts. These are identities of difference racketeering roles, worse than war crimes. So these are also names next to body dumping spots, like an Enzo Fienza has cousins with and people on Two-Rail Highway and conjunctions to it are increasingly involved also with World Trade Center predicate acts and with people who are from other areas who've been planting evidences on my street. And that's why and how. But what motivated them to that, they don't even understand. And then they'll learn about when I talk about because they've already faked conversations with me, though. They're trying to adapt. See, this is what motivates roles with spying because there are natures of industries associated with this completely corrupt, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, principles treatments by psychiatry of American history, let alone of their roles with medicines and drugs crimes, let alone with their roles with that and simultaneously their roles putting fake things in databases. Dear God. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. I want a response. I've been asking for someone to speak to since before the World Trade Center attack. The people I had short conversations with were too afraid. Then they put fake and changed conversations. It's recorded various ways. Intercities involved with FBI Director Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, involved with people from the courts and their family members and overt criminal enterprises, private ones, with child abusers through time connected to leaders of kids' force force. Harvard courts and the Britain Superior Court has families and judges and prosecutors involved with the police forms involved with that too, with their family members. There's an officer Hunter involved with the FBI and some courts with the Britain Superior, with Harvard courts and Harvard Superior Court and the Britain Superior Court with an officer Hunter, also with Central Connecticut State University, also with other natures of police forms, with some sexual and medical offenders of kids. And people have been putting fake things in databases at campuses I went to behind my back to put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, who also have wire crime roles and digital crimes with the forensics names and with Wethersfield Police at the same time. Forensics has roles with state police families interstates, not legitimately with the intelligence associated with the DeMauro, Cololo, planting evidences, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me at all sides of the community center and at it. Has something to do with the roles with the people. Like a whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital have been planting evidences at the community center and people with the World Trade Center attack in the court next to it and all sides of the case in a case in the court that day as people involved interstates with that and the Washington, D.C. too and other states. These are also people with people from other countries and the bordering states at the same time and names from states near the borders who had time roles with differences racketeering, some black KKK, Confederate black team, Latino team, pretending passions and emotions, bringing up subjects at locations to cover up how they force things before interbranch locations where they already use their own differences and other people's differences as little fakes. all best natures of investigation, investigative identities of the law. It's not to insult. Oh, it's an insult to us. Black pupils, you guys are insulting us. Get them out paper, one name in sequence. Watch here, learn. Who disbelieve?